Most people will say, what is so interesting about fills? Well, if I show you this one, I think you'll agree that this is a pretty cool one. So this is going to be the fill right here. Actually, it's going to be this part here, but I'm going to play it from here so that you get an idea of what the drop sounds like before. And I'll also play it a little bit into this drop here as well. So as you can hear, a really nice way to transition from a more progressive style drop with a more progressive style groove into a rolling kick and bass. And that's really what makes this fill really hard to accomplish. The fact that you're really not just kind of transitioning from element to element, but also from bassline to bassline. Usually when it comes to your fill, one of your elements is going to stop playing and then some other elements are going to take over, like you can see in this case here. But here, as I said, we're also changing the bassline, and that means that we're really changing the energy as well. Combine that with the fact that here I really want to go to a very high energy element as well, as you can hear from the drums and you can hear from the synths as well. So not only does this need to transition the groove, it also needs to transition the energy level. So what that means, for one, this fill is fairly long. It's 4 bars long, which is generally very long for the fills that I like to do. I like to go usually with 1 or 2 bars, something like that. Generally speaking, I do recommend at least 1 bar of a fill because that is like the minimum amount of space that I would use for transition between elements or energy levels. But because we're doing such a big transition here, I really needed more space to accomplish that. Also, what we're doing is we're filtering out the kick and bass already in here. So we're already preparing the listener for something that is about to come. The kick and bass is filtering out. So when we get to this point in the fill right here, there's also no sub bass remaining because we are filtering it out. Then that means that the transition is already apparent that it's going to happen. So now let's dive into some of the individual elements. The very first important element is this massive boom impact right here. This gives it a lot of power, a lot of like strength when the fill initially plays. Particularly because we are filtering out the low end of the kick and the bass here, there's no sub bass in here, so you get this massive impact of bass just kind of suddenly appearing. The main bulk of the fill is made up out of these orchestral drums right here. As you can hear, we have some strong impacts on each part of the bar, and we're also adding some snares in here to add extra riser and extra buildup, and together with the kick and bass part that sits in this little part here, it already announces the 16-note beat that is about to come. We have some other drums in here as well, mainly some crashes and stuff like that. I think there's a fill in here, stuff like that. And then, as I said, there's the rolling kick and bass, which is coming in filtered as well in here, so that it already announces what is about to happen. The way that I achieve this kick and bass is I like to filter them out with like really high Q filters, so you get an extra boost in the frequency region that still kind of exists in the part here, and I'm driving that into a saturator. What this does is it's going to saturate those and it's going to generate some extra harmonics, so you still maintain some of the grittiness of it, some of the higher frequencies of it, but it's not so extreme because we are filtering them out. Now, before we continue, I do quickly want to say that if you enjoyed this video, make sure that you're subscribed and that you like the video. Also, if you want to support me financially, you can do so by checking out my products on Gumroad, including sample packs, preset packs, and a whole bunch more, as well as my Patreon page where you'll get early access to videos, priority in feedback streams, and many more benefits. The links for both of them are going to be in the description. Now, this whole fill revolves around the actual main sequence of this part, which is this one right here. This is made up of a whole bunch of different elements. And as you can hear, it sounds like this. Now, I'm not going to go over the sound design of the whole thing. What I do want to say is that it's fairly simple. Here are all of the sounds played solo. And the final element here is this melodic line here. This is actually a modified desk glitch preset here. And just with a simple melody like this, you get some really cool sounds. And we're just triggering this one with a simple melody where we're mainly using the octaves here. We're adding some extra like lower notes in here. And then we have this melodic variation, which really stands out from the rest of it. The reason why this melodic variation is so interesting and the melody as a whole is so interesting is because of what it does in the fill itself. So as you can see, the high point of like the melody is this part here. So this last beat is really where the melody is kind of at its highest point, at its highest frequency actually. And you can really hear how what it's really doing with the whole melody is that it almost pulls itself back into the drop here. It has this like nice slide to it. It has then that lower note and then it goes back into the melody where it goes back into the root note, and that's really the effect that you hear. Now obviously this is happening every 2 bars, but you notice it here much more because at this point here, this last beat of the fill is completely empty. As you can see, I have left it completely empty of any other stuff here. There's some effects that overlap here, but both of those are like small tails here. This is the boom impact here again, so that's a small tail as well. Literally everything is making space for this effect to come through so that it really just sits on its own and it just grabs your attention, pulls you back into the drop, and then the drop continues. At this point, one of the things I should probably say is that we're analyzing this fill in deep detail, but I didn't write it like this. Like all of this analysis I'm doing after the fact, but when you're writing, you're just kind of in the state of creativity and all of these things kind of come automatically. This is not something that you're supposed to think about when you're actually trying to write music. At least not actively I'm thinking about it. Maybe passively, like in the background, it is something that I keep in mind because obviously all of this structuring thing, like you get used to the structure and you get used to the way that music is supposed to sound and supposed to just kind of flow and stuff like that. And studying fills like this and really going into detail on why a fill works or doesn't work can definitely help with that, but it's not something that I would actively do while I'm producing, while I'm actually like writing music. It is more so that maybe once in a while I'll open up a reference track and I'll just have a look at one of the fills, look at what they're doing, how are they transitioning, from what type of drop to what type of other drop are they transitioning. That is an important factor in that. So one of the reasons why this whole fill idea works here is because of what is coming before it and what is coming after it. But all of that stuff is not stuff that you actively think about when you're writing it. It is just stuff, as I said, that you have to kind of study in order to get good at writing. Like imagine you're taking a written exam at university. You don't really need to train your handwriting when you go into the exam. Like you don't need to study handwriting, but you do need to have good handwriting in order for the professor to be able to read your answers and actually grade them. And with making fills like this, it is the same thing. Now let's talk about some of the final effects here. We have a couple of like risers and downlifters. The main risers are actually helping to go into the fill. So this is the start of the fill, as you can see right here. And the risers rise up to that point here. I did leave one of these tails in here because it just helped glue it a little bit together. But usually what I would do for my risers is I would actually remove the tail like this. So it just rises up to a point and then maybe some other effect takes over or something else. But there is at least a little bit more space in whatever I'm transitioning to. But sometimes you do need that little bit of extra gluing that you get from just having this reverb tail in here. We already saw the impact there, and then there's the final riser here, which is rising up until the point where the final section of the fill is. If you noticed, it is essentially like a 3-segment like fill thing. So we have the first segment here. This is the second segment where the kick and bass is announced, and then this the third segment that is after that announcement of the kick and bass, and that really helps transition into the more melodic side of things, which ends with just the melody as I explained before. So with that, I've explained everything that I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.